Mr. Green. Mr. Cooper for 5.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Wernick, your telephone conversation with Jody Wilson-Raybould on December 19th, 2018 was made at the request of Justin Trudeau, correct?
I'm sorry? I didn't hear that.
Restate the question,
Your
please.
telephone conversation with Jody Wilson-Raybould on December 19th, 2018 was made at the request of Justin Trudeau, correct?
Not specifically to call her, but my recollection of it is, and you can read me back my testimony, is that he wanted to find out what her rationale was for not pursuing the DPA at the time.
And so Justin Trudeau testified, but he did make that request in his testified to the ethics commissioner. And to put some context with respect to that call, hours before you initiated that call, you had met with the Prime Minister, his Chief of Staff, Katie Telford, and his then Principal Secretary, Gerald Butts, in which SNC Lavalin and the issue of deferred prosecution agreement came up.
Yes, that was our last meeting before the Christmas holidays and a 2.5 week break before we all came back in January.
Thank you for that, Mr. Wernick. I appreciate your answer. No, I appreciate you answered the question.
Point of order. Hang on. Mr. Cooper, please, I see your point of order. I'm going to maybe solve what you're going to be asking. I would just ask that you give Mr. Wernick an opportunity to answer the question, please, Mr. Cooper. With it, okay.
Thank you, Chair. I just thank you for that.
Go ahead.
So, as I said at the committee, it was one of many issues that we discussed at a Christmas holiday wrap-up meeting.
Okay. Thank you for that. And to put further context with respect to that call, one day before that call, Jody Wilson-Raybould's Chief of Staff was summoned by Katie Telford and Gerald Butts and was told that by Butts and Telford that they didn't want to hear anything more about legalities. They wanted to get a deferred prosecution agreement done. So when the Prime Minister asked you to make this call, he was effectively giving Jody Wilson-Raybould her last chance to make the decision that he wanted before he fired her, wasn't he?
I'm not aware of the conversation that Ms. Telford and Mr. Butts had at the time. When I had my call, I wouldn't have been aware of that. And this was before Mr. Bryson resigned from cabinet and created the need for a cabinet shuffle.
Well, Mr. Wernick, that conversation of Ms. Telford and Mr. Butts is now well documented, backed up by contemporaneous notes taken by Ms. Wilson-Raybould's Chief of Staff. So let's look at the facts. After months of pressure on the Attorney General and the day following the meeting where the Prime Minister's Chief of Staff and Principal Secretary tell Ms. Wilson-Raybould's Chief of Staff, we don't care about legalities, just get it done, you give Ms. Wilson-Raybould a call at the request of the Prime Minister, wherein you state the Prime Minister is quite determined that he's going to find a way to get it done one way or another, that he is in a very firm mood about this, and you were worried about a collision occurring between him and her. So those are some very strong words, veiled threats. Why would you use those words if, in fact, it wasn't Jody Wilson-Raybould's last chance to make the decision that the Prime Minister wanted before he was going to fire her?
You're hypothesizing an intention to fire her, which I was certainly not aware of at the time.
Well, you issued a number of threats.
And you're an idiot.
After the Prime Minister's Chief of Staff had only a day prior, and his Principal Secretary said, we're done with the legalities. And then guess what? 2.5 weeks later, after this phone call, following the Christmas break, she was fired as Attorney General. So taken together, I would submit there is no reasonable conclusion that can be drawn other than that the Prime Minister fired Jody Wilson-Raybould when she wouldn't acquiesce to his demands to interfere in the criminal prosecution of SNC Lavalin. And you know what that's called, Mr. Wernick? It's called obstruction of justice, isn't it?
I think that's for the police to determine.
Can smell the
Wernick,
bullshit, dude.
You couldn't back up with any credibility the issue of SNC moving its headquarters. What about the jobs? What analysis had the government taken that at least 9,000 jobs were on the line?
So I think that was all covered at the Justice Committee and the production of documents for that. I don't have any of that material in front of me.
And
right now.
the answer that you gave to Ms. May when she posed that question to you is that no analysis had been done.
There had been statements by the company and market disclosures, and there had been representations by the company, which are on the record.
This was a pressure campaign made by the Prime Minister, not in the public interest. It was clearly the Prime Minister acting in the interest of SNC Lavalin,
Okay, thank
and that's exactly what the Ethics Commissioner found.
Thank you, Mr.